Talking to my friend Joe Salama, and he's kind of a Renaissance guy. He's an author, he's a publisher, he's an attorney, and Joe, I want to say thank you so much for spending a few minutes and talking to us. And I want to talk to you about your book, The Paleo Miracle, and talk about you and what brought you to the party. So take a second and kind of give us that 20,000 view of Joe Salama.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Bill, and I appreciate being in front of your audience. And I, I'll talk a little bit about myself now. I am Egyptian. My parents are both born in Egypt, but I'm first generation. I was born in the United States, and I grew up in California. And, I've been living my whole life like everybody else, from day to day, learning about diet and nutrition and life generally from other people, which is how I think most of the country does it. We rely a little bit on our government, we rely a little bit on our parents, we rely a little bit on our friends and family, and certainly on the media to understand basically what a good diet consists of. I went to school at UC Berkeley. I got an economics degree and a rhetoric degree. And I actually feel I learned a lot more with the rhetoric degree than I did with the economics degree. In any case, I went to law school in Boston University, and have been practicing for about 11 and a half years now. So my practice is medical malpractice, predominantly, some real estate transactional work, and I also do mediations. People come to me with their problems, and we sit down and we work through them rather than them suing one another. And very recently, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I put out my first book, which you made reference to, and that is The Paleo Miracle.
And I have to say, while you're showing that, it's a great book, and I would urge anybody that sees this to stop what they're doing, go out, go to our website, you'll see a link to it, Paleo Miracle, you'll see a link to the Amazon site that hosts it. It's a great book, Joe.
Thank you. Do you want to hear about the book right now?
I want to hear about the book and how you came up with the concept and the idea and why you came up with the concept of creating a book with 50 profiles of people who have truly changed their lives.
I'll give my story is in the book, and there are many other stories. There are about 58 or 59 total stories, but 50 sounds like a nice round number for the title of a book, so that's what we went with. But I'll give you a nutshell of my story. Is about 2 years ago, I got divorced, and I learned it's never too late to reinvent yourself. I was 39 years old at the time, and I was looking for ways to basically enhance my own life. I learned a lot about a lot of different things. I learned a lot about psychology. I learned a lot about social discourse. I learned a lot about people, how they think, why they think the way they think. In that same vein of self-improvement, I stumbled upon, with the help of a friend of mine named David Story, he kept saying to me, you should look into this paleo diet. You should look into this paleo diet. Well, the last 5 or 6 years of my marriage, before that, I had been, quote unquote, plagued with a new disease, attention deficit disorder. It was new for me. I didn't have it as a childhood. In my childhood, I didn't have it at all. And things became more challenging in life, basically. I needed to get medication. I needed to get amphetamines, prescription amphetamines, to manage my attention deficit disorder. I had to make a lot of lifestyle changes. I had to put in a lot of mechanisms in order to maintain the same level of focus and performance at my job. My job, somewhat relentless in that regard. So there wasn't much room for error, and it was a struggle to keep up with it. I think I did a very good job, but when I finally started doing, at David's suggestion, this paleo thing, which I kind of jumped into it not knowing what it was about. I didn't really know why I was doing it, except that I trusted David's suggestion. I didn't know what would happen when I went through this tunnel, basically. And so I went for the first couple of weeks, and it's dropping grains and processed foods. It's the nuts and bolts of it. And I went through my cupboards, and there were all grains there, and there are tons of processed foods. I remember looking at my sugar, Best Yet brand sugar, or excuse me, I remember looking at my salt. It was Best Yet brand salt, and I looked at the ingredients of it just to make a thorough sweep of my cupboard. And I saw the first ingredient was salt, which is great because it's a salt product. It's supposed to be 100% salt. The next ingredient was silica, which I found out was sand, an anti-caking agent. Okay, it's probably inert, it's probably not going to poison me or anything. And the third ingredient in my salt was sugar. And I was pretty alarmed by that. And it made me learn not to take anything for granted with what the products I buy purport to be and what they actually are. So I cleaned out my cupboard, and I went through the first couple of weeks, and I was eating chicken salads, and I was dying. I mean, I felt miserable. I had no energy. I was sleeping all day long, and it wasn't good. Right about that time, I was added to a Facebook group called IPMG, the International Paleo Movement Group on Facebook. And I get in there and I post right away. I said, listen, I'm dying over here. How long is this transition period to go from a grain-centered diet to a grain-free diet supposed to last? And they said it should only last a couple of weeks. What are you eating? And I said, I'm eating chicken salads. And they said, well, that explains it. You're not getting any fat, you're not getting any carbs. You're going to feel miserable until you increase the amount of fat in your food and increase the amount of carbs. So it made sense to me. I kind of feel a little embarrassed I didn't think about that earlier. But that day I made another chicken salad, and I dumped an uncomfortably large amount of olive oil on it, and I felt fantastic within an hour or two. And from that day forward, I felt about 40% better every day, passing the point which I started. Until about 3.5 weeks into this, I felt pretty good. Not 100%, but pretty good. So I looked at my calendar, and I had a big project to work on. It was a deadline. It was due the next day. So I got a good night's sleep. I woke up the next day, and I worked on my project. And I reviewed it. It was an opposition to a motion. So basically, a lawyer files something on behalf of their client, some papers, and you have to oppose it. You have to respond to it. So the moving papers were about 1.5 inches thick. Big, a lot of papers. So I reviewed them, and I wrote my response, and my response was only 5 pages. And I thought to myself, am I missing something? You know, can I respond to 1.5 inches worth of papers with 5 pages and expect to do a good job? And I reviewed everything over and over and over, and everything seemed right. And actually, it seemed a little redundant. So I shaved it down to 4 pages, and I sent it to the court. And I thought to myself, thank goodness I took my ADD medication, because that's what I thought after every big project, because I wouldn't have been able to do that level of focus and performance without my medication. And then it struck me that I didn't take my medication that day. And I realized that it was my diet that has basically removed all the symptoms of ADHD from me completely. And the judge ended up quoting my papers and ruling in my favor, in my client's favor. And there's no better way of affirming that it was a wise decision to not take my medication and to do this diet than to see my performance enhanced to that degree.
So I understand, this is amazing. You never sat down and went through any of there's reams of information in books and publications. Rob Wolf and Mark Sisson and Lauren Cadane and so many other people have written about this diet. And you just went into it kind of blind and silly, and it worked.
I fell into it quite by accident. That's absolutely true. And I felt amazing. And my whole life, whenever I've been enthusiastic about something, anything, I talk about it constantly. My kids, I talk about constantly still, because I'm still crazy in love and enthusiastic about them. And I started talking about this. I started saying, listen, you know, I had $400 in medical costs every month that I had to pay for, only to get to a point where I was struggling with the symptoms. And here I am in 3 weeks, and I cured it. How come my physicians, who I respect and who have a lot of education and degrees, didn't tell me about this? And I looked into it more, and Most physicians are not required to take nutritional courses, certainly not continuing nutritional courses. And I did more research, and there's a lot of authority out there for diets to improve attention deficit disorder. None of that was ever discussed with me at all. And the lesson that I learned there was not to take other people's words for it. You know, you grow up in a world, and it has walls, and it has rules like gravity, and it has things that you take for granted. And you take for granted that your doctors always know the best thing for you. And I don't doubt that they know 1,000 times more than I do about the subject. But I did doubt, and I still continue to doubt, that they know everything about the subject and the role of nutrition in helping people, in my case, with attention deficit disorder. So I'm in this group on Facebook, and I see stories, countless stories. Other people with attention deficit disorder, people with heart problems, people with heart disease that increase the amount of saturated fat they eat in order to cure it. Things that I never thought were actually could be real. But I experienced it myself. And I see people transform. Their attitude transforms, their disease transforms, their view on doctors transforms, their view on nutrition transforms, and their bodies also transform. Kind of a side bonus. You know, everyone in the paleo community knows this phrase, but when your body is healthy on the inside, it looks good on the outside. Your change happens from the inside out. And with a lot less effort, maybe a tenth as much effort, I started to have a lot more of the body that I always dreamed about having.
But you also do, Joe, you do other things, but you were a runner as a young man. You were an avid runner, a great runner, as a matter of fact. And now you're involved in swimming, and I believe you're in CrossFit or looking at that. And you're looking at the whole body, not just the diet, which is all part of, I think, this, I'm going to call it the paleo movement. The things you've learned from the book, if you looked at the 50-some profiles in the book, what are the 2 or 3 things you have as a takeaway we could share with other people to tell them that this is a dramatic change in the way people can live?
I would say the first thing is not to take anything for granted. It's your life, it's your body, it's your health, and you can make a difference despite what other people have told you. It is possible to make change in your life. Will this cure everybody of everything? Probably not. But it is there for you to discover, and it's waiting for you to discover, and the potential could be very incredible.
It is very simple, isn't it?
It is. It's amazing. It's a lot easier than it's right there. You know, it's just all you have to do is change the way you eat. How hard is it not to eat that donut every morning? Well, that's your own choice, and maybe it's harder for some than it is for others. But the potential upside of it is incredible. I feel 15 years younger. Easily feel 25 years old, and I'm 41 now.
Well, Joe, I want to thank you so much for the time and sharing the story of the Paleo Miracle, and it is, I think, a miracle for many, many people. And again, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Bill. I appreciate it.